Imagine discovering something before you ever even look for it. No telescope, no blurry sky photos, just numbers. In 1846, that's exactly what happened. Astronomers were watching Uranus, the newest member of the planetary club, when they noticed something strange. It wasn't behaving. Its orbit had these perturbations, like a car that drifts slightly every few miles. Not enough to crash into the moon, but enough to invite scrutiny. Now, at the time, this posed a serious dilemma, because either Uranus was drunk, Newton's laws were wrong, or, and this was the coolest idea, something unseen was pulling on it. Which is where the math came in. Two mathematicians working independently, Urbain Leverrier in France, nailed that. Urbain Leverrier in France and John Couch Adams in England ran the calculations. They analyzed Uranus's position, its velocity, the deviations, the possible masses that could be interfering with it. And they both reached the same conclusion. There's another planet out there. Here's where you'll find it. And get this, they were right. Leverrier sent his findings to Johann Galle. I'm so sorry about these name pronunciations. At the Berlin Observatory. Guy pointed a telescope towards the predicted location. And within a tiny margin of error was Neptune. Exactly where the math said it would be. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't luck. It was pure gravitational deduction. Neptune didn't just exist. It made its gravity of the situation known through math alone. It was the first time a planet had been predicted before it had ever been observed. And in that moment, Newton's laws weren't just fun little quirks of the universe. They were a revelation. A cosmic detective kit, a universal cheat code that could conjure unseen worlds out of thin air and number crunching. It was vindication. Because if anyone ever doubted that Newton had figured out how the universe worked, well, Neptune settled the score. He was right, gloriously right. Oh, look, a voicemail from Mercury and Einstein. I'll call them back later. Where was I? Oh, right. Gravity was never challenged again. Newton was a legend in physics. And then came Shigeru Miyamoto. You saw that one coming, come on. Fans of this retro game review series have already been exposed to him for his work on the arcade classic Donkey Kong and the game that rewired all our childhoods, Super Mario Bros. On the NES. But in between those two pillars of gaming history, our mustachioed mascot actually got around, making appearances in a handful of titles. Before he was even Super, a Game & Watch carried his name. He headlined an arcade cabinet. And yes, he even made his way onto the Atari. Today we're digging into one of the ports of that arcade game, a version that had no business being as good as it is, but somehow is anyway. For the letter M in our Atari 2600 A to Z frenzy, this is Mario Bros. For the Atari Video Computer System. Mario Bros. For the Atari Video Computer System, which we now know as the Atari 2600, was released in 1983 by Atari. It's a home console port of Nintendo's Mario Bros. Arcade game from that same year, back when Mario was still figuring out whether he wanted to be a carpenter, plumber, a zoologist with a vendetta against turtles. The game was programmed by Dan Hitchens, who had previously ported Berserk to the 2600. Despite the console's infamous limitations, Hitchens managed to cram in a fully playable experience that captured the spirit of the arcade original. It's a single-screen platformer designed for 1 or 2 players, and yes, that means simultaneous 2-player action. No waiting your turn while player 1 hoards all the fun. Imagine that. You and a friend can cause chaos in real time. You know, as you do. Just don't expect it to improve your friendship. Controls are handled with the standard joystick as nature intended. Your usual compatibles work here, e.g. your Genesis controller. And while the console technically supports other peripherals like the kids controller, the keyboard controller, or even the Star Raiders touchpad, Dad, those are all from the same animal. Sure, Lisa, one magical animal. All are functionally identical, and absolutely none of them are invited to this party. Genre-wise, it sits comfortably in the arcade-style action or single-screen platformer camp, depending on how much of a stickler you are about labels. But either way, what matters is this. They got Mario Bros. Working on the 2600. And it's better than you probably think. Overview. Every job has its own version of infighting. For Nintendo, in the early 80s, if you really exaggerate the story, Donkey Kong had a flaw. Jumpman died, quite easily, from fall damage. After all, nothing says platformer like being unable to survive a landing. Mario Bros. Was the answer to that. And what an answer it was. Mario Bros. Is a single-screen platformer where your job is to clear the stage of every enemy in sight. It follows the standard arcade loop. Clear a wave. The next one shows up with either new enemies, up to a point, or more of the ones you already love. Yeah, the concept here is it becomes more difficult as you advance. Not groundbreaking by any stretch of the imagination, but it does break up the repetition with the bonus stages. And in these, it's just you, a timer, and a bunch of coins to grab. No enemies, no stress. Unless you have a compulsion to go all Pokemon on dem dare coins and decide you gotta catch them all. While the timer isn't particularly tight, a mistake or two can cause you to time out and miss that one coin. And it haunts you. So here we've got a game where you've got a single screen, some platforms, and an array of enemies. You run and leap around trying not to die, incapacitate an enemy, and then finish them off. Sounds familiar, right? Well, here's the thing. This game shares a lot of surface traits with a couple of other arcade icons, namely Joust and Bubble Bobble. And that's where the tangent cam kicks in. Let's start with Joust. You've got airborne characters navigating a wraparound platform-filled arena, and the whole thing runs on an inertia plus precision control scheme that feels like someone handed Newton's laws to a caffeinated bird. But here's the kicker. Joust is all about mastering your own movement against opponents with similar mobility. It's not a huge stretch to consider the feel of this game to be very gladiatorial. No power-ups or score-multiplying chain reactions. Just you, your ostrich, and an unspoken determination to avoid falling in the lava. Disable the gladiator, touch the egg to win. Now jump over to Bubble Bobble. This one's cute, colorful, and grounded in the trap and pop loop. You've got platforms, again, enemies, again, and a screen full of hazards, but the tone is wildly different. Bubble Bobble is about indirect combat and chain scoring, with the constant temptation to set up bigger and bigger combos. Or to just complete the stage by any means necessary before the doom whale spawns. You know, kind of like the motivating factor you have to get that report on your boss's desk post-haste. It's a puzzle wrapped in an action game, sugar-coated with sweets and the adorable plop plop and fizz fizz. Now that's continuity. Mario Bros. Provides yet another variation on this core concept. Bop them from below and kick them while they're stunned to discard the bad guy. So are these three titles connected? It's hard to say. There's no obvious smoking gun that suggests one directly begat the others. Williams wasn't exactly taking notes from Taito, or vice versa. Or so it would seem. It feels more like they're all drinking from the same creative water supply that flowed through early 80s arcade design. Developers were experimenting with vertical space and player mobility. The idea that a stage could be a fixed, looping battlefield was not revolutionary during the release of any of these titles. The similarities might be more convergent evolution than familial relation, like three different species all learning to fly, because the food is up there. Console switches. The power switch does exactly what you think it does. Turns the game on. Select cycles through 8 game modes, which might be an interesting topic to cover. Atari was all over the place with selectable game modes, from 88 or even triple digits to none whatsoever. Okay, 1. The reasoning on a game-by-game basis could be an engaging curiosity to uncover. Regardless, Mario Bros. Supplies you with 8 options, different combinations of 3 or 5 lives, 1 or 2 players, and fireballs or no fireballs. 3 yes-no options equal 8 game modes. L2 cubed confirmed. Reset will boot you back to the game select screen mid-play, which is handy if you realize too late that you've chosen the mode where your friend always wins. The TV type switch is completely ignored, as are the difficulty switches. A fun thought experiment here would be to brainstorm ideas as to what the difficulty switch could actually do, if you had that decisive power. Would you alter the Would you alter the player speed? Jump height? Alter fireball spawn frequency? Require double the amount of default hits to incapacitate a pest? Let me know. I'm curious. My youthful experience. I have a few childhood memories of the arcade version of Mario Bros. Dimly lit pizza places, quarters lined up on the glass, but nothing too vivid. The port we're talking about today, though, that one is burned into my brain. Picture it, the local mall. My dad and I wander into an electronics boutique, which, yes, more precisely indicates my age than carbon dating does. We didn't buy video games often, but apparently this was a yes day, and I was told to pick out a game. As I scanned the racks, my eyes landed on Mario. Now, there were two versions staring back at me, the 7800 port and the 2600 port. The 7800 one had better visuals, sure, but then came my dad's budgetary mic drop. We can get two 2600 games or one 7800 game. And just like that, Mario Bros. For the 7800 went back on the shelf, and Mario Bros. For the 2600 was joined by Real Sports Baseball in my soon-to-be treasurable plastic bag. From the moment I fired it up, Mario Bros. Was instantly fun. I had some idea of the mechanics from watching skilled arcade players, so my conceptual understanding was instantaneous. The fireball modes were too tough for my younger self, so I stuck to the non-fireball modes, played them relentlessly. And when I say relentlessly, I mean it. Friends, family, solo sessions, it didn't matter. This was my game. At one point, someone told me, "You look like you're doomed and always come out smelling like a rose." I'm not sure that's a standard gaming compliment, but I took it as one. I got so good that I'd literally hide Mario in a safe spot during dinner, leave the game running, and resume afterwards. One day, after countless runs, I hit level 99 and cleared it. Advanced to 00, which was actually a bonus stage. Thrilled to see what triple digits, but only 2 displayed, would have in store. The next stage loaded, and it displayed 01. And it was level 01. Anticlimactic, sure, but still kinda cool. Adult me, however, has questions. In old games, rollovers usually happen for obvious technical reasons. Think the 255 rupee limit in Zelda, because 8-bit registers max out. Fortunately, someone was thoughtful enough to cap it rather than let it roll over. But Mario Bros. For the 2600 rolls over at a nice, clean 100. This base 10 logic is a mild enigma to me. It makes me wonder, is the game actually loading levels based on the displayed stage number and not some hidden counter? I still don't know. Somewhere, I'm sure, there's an Atari code sleuth who's mapped this out. And someday, I'd like to find them. Bottom line, my childhood with this game was immense, and my memories of it, extremely, extremely fond. The look. Mario Bros. Greets you with a glowing title screen, bright stylized lettering against the inky black void of space, or, you know, the TV screen. Some copyright info quietly squats at the bottom. By 1983, this kind of dedicated title screen was becoming more common on the 2600, but still wasn't a given. Plenty of older games just booted you straight into a freeze frame of the gameplay screen, like an impatient babysitter. So even a simple title screen with glowing nameplate, it's already lapping the competition. Fire up a game and you're reminded, yep, this is still the Atari 2600. But this actually looks good. Really good considering the hardware. Mario and Luigi have well-defined sprites, complete with the characteristics we all know and love. Overalls, hats, mustaches. Oh, and apparently still carpentry licenses, because the manual for this port still calls Mario a carpenter. Evidently, whoever wrote the backstory was not caught up on their Mario literature, stuck in the Donkey Kong era of career paths. Enemies? The shell creepers look like realistic turtles, not the cartoony kind the Mario universe settled on. before this port existed. The sidesteppers are just fine, resembling a rough draft of Zoidberg doing that dance. And the fighter flies? Well, let's just say they're the most ambitious sprite here, and ambition doesn't always translate. As a kid, I thought of them more as purple bow tie pastas hopped up on caffeine. The fireballs are serviceable and could double as a hurricane symbol from a weather map. And slip ice, the icy little troublemaker, looks exactly like what it is, a tiny snow mound with bad intentions. I mean, a pipe pest so stylistically basic it was practically designed with the 2600 in mind. Extra lives are shown as a single color Mario/Luigi head, which, as a kid, I didn't even recognize right away. Honestly, that just makes me realize how well the multiple colors on the plumber sprites add to the game. Carpenter sprites? Making them stand out more. Clear colors, recognizable features, all wrapped in the tiny pixel budget the 2600 allowed. But then, the wafers. In nearly all other versions of the game, you've got coins popping out of the pipes after you take out a pest. 2600 port? They're just moving squares. They borrow colors from whatever happens to be on their same horizontal plane, and when not applicable, they go rogue with some random hue. I get it, hardware limitations, but these little chocolate chip imposters are easily the weakest part of the presentation. The stage itself is Atari simple. Green, detail-free pipes at the four corners, flat, plank-like platforms that don't jiggle when bopped, no staggering on the second floor like the other versions. And the POW block? Just a rectangle. It's stripped down, yes, but it's also clean and readable. Visually, compared to early 2600 hits like Adventure, this is practically Rembrandt. Now, we can't discuss this game without talking about sprite flicker. It's not as bad as some Atari games, but it's definitely noticeable. Borderlining on just bad if you're playing it on a monitored set. It was programmed to be played on a CRT, and it looks fine on a CRT. I think critics of that point, which should be obvious, are either leaning hard into the hyperbole or oblivious to the very basics of how image persistence works, or how it worked on the intended visual interface. Like, seriously, did these people eat soup with a fork and complain about all the wasted liquid? But I digress. And when you lose all your lives, you're sent back to the title screen. But now it's flashier, literally brighter. The black void has been replaced by a bright and colorful background, which feels like an odd reward for failing the game. Why? Video game logic, my friend. Video game logic. The sound. Mario Bros. On the 2600 is a study in the art of sound effects. You've got the scuff-scuff of shoes as you run, the solid thunk of bonking a platform from below with your skull, the satisfying plink when you grab a coin in the bonus round, or a wafer in the regular rounds. Nab enough points for an extra life, and that plink stretches into a slightly more triumphant plink. Lose a life, you get a shoo of your hopes and dreams evaporating into the ether. It's all good. Some people might call the running sound annoying, but I played this a lot as a kid, so I'm immune. It's like a childhood smell. Other people wrinkle their nose. You get nostalgic. Musically speaking, there's not much going on here. Just a short little ditty when you clear a stage. But it's actually a solid little ditty, charmingly approximating the arcade's celebratory tune through the 2600's humble sound chip. I do plan on covering the 7800 port of this game eventually. No, not in 2026. I'm still knee-deep in this A to Z 2600 Odyssey, and the other half of the alphabet will eat up the rest of this calendar year. But here's a teaser. I actually prefer the sounds in the 2600 version over the 7800. Why? You'll just have to come back in a couple years for the full TED Talk. Bottom line, the 2600 Mario Bros. Delivers where it needs to. Every sound has a purpose and nothing feels overbearing. And most importantly for TIA audio, it is not annoying. And that's practically an Olympic achievement. Gameplay. At its core, this port is a pretty faithful home take on the arcade Mario Bros., but it's got its quirks. and a few exclusives that give it personality. Shell creepers are simple enough. Bop once, kick 'em to their doom. Sidesteppers require 2 bops, and they speed up after the first. Once you get the feel for it, you can handle them fine. Fighter flies might be the most difficult. They're not vulnerable to bopping when they're off the ground, and timing can be absurdly and hilariously frustrating, especially if you're in a perfectly mistimed rhythm. Or even worse, miss 3 times, then get them, but because you're so convinced you're never going to hit them, you revive them with the 4th attempt because comedy gold. Slip ice can be defeated by just a bop from below, but also, well, let's circle back to that. Once you're down to the final enemy of the stage, that enemy will move faster. You'll get him, but it may take him a trip or 2 through the plumbing first. Defeat that final enemy, and you're still at risk until he's fallen completely off screen. Not an issue in non-fireball modes, but you totally can die to a fireball as the final enemy is falling. Okay, I mentioned some 2600 quirks, and boy, does this port have them. Most obvious is how the stunned enemies are handled. Here, they act out a little drama in still frames, cycling through poses like bad actors in a silent film. Shell creepers flop onto their backs, flip to something resembling a Vitruvian man pose, then back on their shells, before regaining their composure. Sidesteppers alternate which claws down as they wake up, and fighter flies, they change the size of their little bow tie. Slip ice, the ice-spreading troublemaker, technically can't be stunned. You bop him and he disappears, giving you points in the process. But he does kind of enter a stunned state when he's melting. He goes through his own 3-stage freeze frame act. Freeze frame act. I dig it. And yes, you can kick him like a stunned foe. My guess, it was just easier to program him that way. But it's a quirk that makes this port distinct. Movement is solid once you learn it. Once you've got your running, your jumping, your momentum stops dead for a split second when you land, not too bad. Hit detection is fair and the stopping distance feels about right. Except when slip ice is iced over the platforms, in which case you'll skid like you're wearing bowling shoes on well-oiled glass. The controls aren't immediately instinctive, but they're absolutely learnable. I never had trouble after a little practice, but then I've been playing this version for decades without fireballs. Beginners might need a warm-up lap or 2. Lose a life and still have some left. You respawn at the top of the screen, waiting there, hovering. There's no little safe platform holding you like in other ports. But you are invincible until you manually move your character, which is a nice touch. A nice touch that allows you to get on with it when the coast is clear. The POW block works a little differently here too. You can't stand on it. This is the only version I know where it's never a platform. You get 3 smashes per appearance, and it refreshes after any bonus round. Speaking of bonus rounds, you've got 15 seconds to grab all the coins. Screen wrapping is your best friend here. Learn it, or you'll never collect them all solo. And then there's the fireball. Oh, the fireball. In this version, it's a horizontal menace. It spawns, hangs there for a moment that feels shorter every time, then zips across the screen until it despawns, and the cycle repeats. Eventually it gets more intense, and sometimes you'll get the worst possible spawn location, right in your path, and not hesitating, just instantly moving. It doesn't bounce at angles like in other versions, and there's no way to defeat it. It's just there, omnipresent, like your neighbor's car alarm that always goes off at 3 a.m. It's no surprise that childhood EVAD avoided these modes like the plague. Overall, I like the gameplay here. It takes a little getting used to, but once you're in sync with it, it's solid. Let's just say, if I can hit level 00 as a 10-year-old, you can get the hang of it too. I still have my childhood copy of the Mario Bros. Manual. It's in black and white because this was the Tramiel era. And if you know your Atari history, that one sentence tells you everything you need to know about the production budget. This is also one of the few 2600 games I'm aware of that came in both silver label variants. The larger picture label with a thin rainbow line, and the smaller picture red stripe label. Most 2600 Silver Label titles either stuck to one style or were just so overwhelmingly produced in one variant that the other is like spotting a unicorn wearing an Atari hat. But Mario Bros? Nope. Copies in both Silver Label flavors seem to exist in pretty robust numbers. And yet, I see a lot of YouTube videos on 2600 label variants that just lump all silver labels into one big vague category, which is a shame, because the differences are clear once you put the two side by side. Me, myself, and sometimes you. Mario Bros. Works perfectly fine as a solo gig, but let's be honest, this game really shines when you've got a friend sitting next to you. Whether you're teaming up like a well-oiled plumbing duo or secretly plotting each other's downfall, the chaos is half the fun. You can sabotage your partner, either accidentally or with full-on villainous intent. And if you start out cooperative, expect payback. Subtle oops moments or full-on retaliation are basically guaranteed. Sure, other ports might handle two-player mode a bit better, but for the 2600, this version nails the spirit. It's punchy, playful, and surprisingly smooth given the hardware. Bottom line, if you've got a guest over and a 2600 handy, you need to have this in the rotation. Trust me, it's the kind of game that turns casual hangouts into memorable showdowns. Who would like this? Honestly, the easier question might be who wouldn't enjoy this? If you can't stand platformers or just have zero patience for Mario, well, maybe skip this one. But beyond that, I think anyone can find something to like here. They might need to give it a little time, though. The real challenge is that entertainment options today are ridiculously cheap and insanely abundant. So dedicating free time to a 2600 game, even a solid one like this, is a trade-off. You're choosing pixels over AAA blockbusters, or retro charm over instant gratification. And let's be honest, most of us don't have as much time to spare as we once did. That said, if you're willing to invest a little bit of time, Mario Bros. On the 2600 can surprise you. It's a game worth appreciating, once you let it. Legacy. Nobody needs me to tell them Mario's legacy is rock solid. He's basically the face of gaming. But what about this game specifically? The arcade and NES versions still get plenty of love, even though those are starting to feel a little vintage for newer generations. The Atari 2600 port? Well, it probably doesn't have quite the staying power. It's fun to revisit Mario before he went super, but let's be honest, his pre-Super Mario Bros. Days tend to be more of a footnote than a headline. And as much as this 2600 version is one of the more enjoyable ports to actually play, it's unlikely to be the one that defines Mario's legacy. Nintendo isn't going to greenlight this port to any future compilations by Atari. While licensing fees existing doesn't mean it's impossible, you don't lease out your most profitable IP to permit someone to release an outdated port of something that ran on aging hardware. Hardware that was aging when it was released in the first place. It's a solid chapter for the 2600, sure, but not the epic tale that made Mario a legend. Overall, the look is solid given the hardware limitations. The sound, far beyond just acceptable. But where Mario Bros. On the 2600 really shines is the gameplay. This might be the most enjoyable Mario Bros. Port you can play, provided you're willing to accept the sacrifices made to cram it onto the VCS. I highly recommend Mario Brothers for the 2600, especially to fans of the system itself. Probably more so than Mario super fans. That's mostly because today's Mario crowd tends to be too young to see the 2600 as anything other than a primitive relic from a very distant past. But if you're here for the classics, this game is worth your time. Next. That's a wrap on Season 2. I'll be back in a few months. We still have to resume this 2600 titles in 2026. And on the books for our Season 3 premiere, N. Thanks for watching. And as always, see See you next mission.